Couple of interesting things further upstream on the canal. It's still Saturday the 8th of July. This is an extraordinary vessel. I don't know what it is. Moves around the canal. But next to it is a bench with a couple of drinks on it. Now, it's an unremarkable bench, but it is quite poignant. And I shall sit down on the bench and film the peaceful surroundings from the bench as I tell you why it's interesting. There used to be a friend of mine called Pete, and he used to be a heavy drinker, and he was known locally as Cider Pete, which is a total misnomer because he used to drink red wine quite a lot. And he was well known, very nice chap, very affable. Find him in the pub, obviously, quite often. And he gave it up. He went a year or two without. And I suppose you'd call him an alcoholic or a recovering alcoholic. And he used to play a musical instrument, guitar and sing, whatever, in another local pub. Anyway, he had a relationship and it broke down. And it really upset him, so much so that he turned back to drink, and he unfortunately had a breakdown. And his dad, I think, tried to help him out, but it wasn't good enough, and he was hospitalized in, I suppose, a sort of mental section of a local hospital. And I was very sad to hear that. Now, Pete, in his sober and sane times, used to come and sit on this bench, and he'd call it Tranquility Bench, which I thought was nice, you know, and it's more accessible than Tranquility Base, which is on the moon being 250,000 miles away. But Pete often worked for the post office, not sure what as, postman or whatever. So he had an interesting job and an outdoor life, but he used to like coming and sitting here on this bench and just unwinding and thinking about life, the universe and everything, as I've sometimes mentioned. Anyway, he had a breakdown. I heard he was in the local hospital, so I went to visit him. He wasn't expecting to see me. He only half recognised me. And he was a bit paranoid at this stage. He was convinced I'd stolen his false teeth, which of course I hadn't. And that was it really. That was our conversation, which went on for about 5 or 10 minutes. He kept referring to it was a plate, I think, not an entire set. But you know, the chap was befuddled. And it was one of the few examples I've had of witnessing someone with a mental illness. I heard later that he'd been transferred to some institution in Ealing, and he did actually break out of this institution, and he walked all the way from Ealing to Uxbridge, to near where he used to live. His flat was still there, still available, I think, but he had no money. And he walked into the pub and was able to persuade the landlord, who was called Keith. I think he was called Keith, it might have been Grant, to give him a free drink, and then phone calls were made, and he was reunited with his new home in Ealing. But I don't know where he is, or even if he's still alive. But I feel sorry for Pete, and sorry for the emotions that drove him over the edge. I suppose it can happen to more or less anybody, but it's a good example to the rest of us that drinking a lot is not going to be good for you in the long run. So it's a bit of a sad story, which is unlike me, Peter the Rock, but you get a bit of realism with some of these videos. Thank you for watching.